All right, folks, it's compost pile time. I'm kind of excited. New method. I've been attending, still taking classes at the Soil Food Web School by Dr. Elaine Ingham, and learned some new methods. Was kind of a protege of Jeff Lawton and his permaculture practices, but I'm gonna try this new method, a biologically complete compost pile, and let's get going. I don't want this video to drag out too much. I'm kind of a low talker, a slow talker. I'm going to try to speed it up. I don't like videos that drag on forever and ever, so we're going to try to move quickly. Okay, so quick introduction. I don't have my microphone either. Hopefully that's not too big of a problem. I can't find my microphone, but we've got so you can see this set up pretty well. We've got our 1/2-inch hardware cloth sitting on top of a couple of pallets. Pallets are going to allow the airflow. You really want this compost to be aerobic, right? We're going to make a thermophilic, a hot compost pile. It's going to get very hot, and we want airflow all sides. So this is 1/2-inch hardware cloth. It's roughly, in order to get it to fit on the pallets, it's a little less than 4 feet around. It's 4 feet high. I think it's going to, by the time I'm done, it's going to be pretty close to the top, but let's move on. So I'm going to be doing a 50 bucket system. So, and because it's cold here, I'm in Massachusetts, in New England, it's cold. It's still, I think the next 5 nights we're going to be down into the 30s. I talk Fahrenheit here. So pretty cold, but I think we'll be okay. It's mid-April, it's right around our last frost date, and this temperature should get up to around 160 or so pretty quickly. And if it doesn't, we've got ways to try to help that along. So again, a 50 bucket system. That's going to be roughly a cubic meter. Jeff Lawton liked the cubic meter minimum size of a pile. Dr. Elaine talks about a 40 bucket system in her videos, but without further ado, let's get going. So in a 50 bucket system, I'm going to make 5 batches of, what is that, 5 to 10 buckets each. So I'm starting out ramial wood chips. Ramial wood is branches, kind of new growth, branches that are roughly less than about 2 inches in diameter. So this is 10 gallons, 2 buckets, and the 5-gallon buckets are my measuring unit. 2 buckets of ramial wood chips. Run through my chipper. And because it looks a little bit dry, this thing, you want this to be wet, right? This pile, when you grab a handful and you squeeze it, you need to be seeing a drop come out of that squeeze. So it's got to be pretty wet. So if the ingredients look kind of dry, and I've been watering these things down, been accumulating my ingredients for the last, I guess it took me a week to accumulate 50 buckets. So I've been trying to keep it wet, keeping it out in the rain, but looks pretty dry. I'm going to wet this down. Now, for water, you got to be careful about using tap water, right? If you got a municipal system like we have here, they treat it with chlorine. It's got a lot of chlorine and chloramines in it. If you have to use that water, you want to be neutralizing the chlorine with humic acids. For today, I'm using rainwater, so I'm happy about that. I've also, because I'd like to get the party food going a little bit, in this bucket here, I've got a diluted liquid fish concentrate. And in my other watering bucket, I've got diluted liquid kelp. So I'm going to get that wet down. Do 2 at a time here. That aside. So there's 2 buckets. Here we've got shredded leaves, another brown. So I think I forgot to mention this whole thing. Browns, greens, and high nitrogen. Okay, I'm doing 50% browns. So for this pile, that means I've got 25 buckets of brown materials. I'm doing 30% green. So 30% of 50, that's 15 buckets of green materials. And then for the high nitrogen, I'm going 20%. Now sometimes you only do 10% high nitrogen. I'm doing 20 because again, it's fairly cold here. Got some cold temps, and I want to have a good amount of party food in there, the high nitrogen stuff. All right, so here we go. 2 buckets of leaves, much wetter than the wood chips. Doesn't want to come out. Good enough. All right, so that's 4 buckets of browns, right? Now these next 2 buckets are gonna serve as my last bucket of brown and then 1 bucket of greens, because what these are, I trimmed forsythia bushes and some of my cherry branches that had to be pruned. They all had nice buds on them. So this is sort of a high nitrogen ramial wood chip mixture. Come on. I don't know if you can see that, but quite a few greens in here. So I'm counting this as a 50% green and 50% brown. So 2 buckets of that. We'll get my last brown. And will get me 1 green. So right now in here, what do I have? I got my 5 browns. I've got 1 green. Now I'll continue on with the greens. This bucket here is just food scraps. Just cut up an old pumpkin we had left over from last fall. So now that's 2 green. I need 1 more green, right? And my 1 green, I had trouble getting greens. It's not easy getting greens early spring. So I went to Starbucks, was able to get a little bit of coffee. I should have started sooner. But geez, I'm getting out of breath already. It's tough to get old, huh? But because I couldn't get enough buckets of greens, I needed 15. I'm gonna be supplementing with some of this black cow composted cow manure. I wrote to the company a couple years ago. They're about a 12.7 carbon to nitrogen ratio. So that's right around in where your greens need to be. So here's a bucket of black cow manure. Now, do I trust their source of cow manure? Right, no idea where they're getting it. If their cows aren't grass-fed, could be some stuff in here, but if I get a good compost pile going with all those beneficial microbes, bacteria, fungi, nematodes, hopefully they'll take care of any bad stuff that's in this black cow compost. And well, that's my plan anyways. Let the microorganisms do their job and clean up any junk that's in there. Black cow is just slightly more than could fit in a 5-gallon bucket, so I'm saying close enough. Just going to dump the whole bag. All right, 5 browns, 3 greens. Now I'm going to give this a little more water. Haven't really been paying too much attention. Now 2 buckets of my high nitrogen, and I've got farm manure here. This manure comes from this farm, had goats, donkey, chickens, cows. So this is, I tried to look through their pile and get a good mixture of stuff. Variety is the spice of life. I think even a couple eggshells in there. Variety is also good for your biologically complete compost pile. Now, one thing, some of these clumps of manure tend to be kind of big. That's why I've got this. I haven't tried this before, but I got this scrap piece of wood here. If I see a big clump, this looks like maybe a big clump of manure. I think what I'm going to try to do, if I was a real farmer, I think I would be, hopefully I'm still on camera here. If I was a real farmer, I would be breaking this up with my hand, but I'm just going to try this chopper, get things chopped up. I don't want to put holes in my tarp, that's why I thought I would use this board, but we'll mix this up. Clumps here. You want to try to reduce the size of some of these clumps if you can, and there'll be more opportunities to reduce the size once when you're turning the piles. This should be just a 2-turn pile, so over the course of the next month or so. So I'll try to show you more of that. All right, so I'm going to pause here and check the quality of this video. I hope it's coming out okay, and then we'll show the getting this mixed up and getting it moved over into our cage. All right. Okay, folks, I guess that video quality wasn't too bad. My face was off the camera, part of it, but it's probably a bonus for you viewers out there in YouTube land. So we are not doing another take. One take, that's our motto here. So spent about 10 minutes mixing this up. Not perfect. I don't feel like it has to be perfect. You look at this pile and you say, gee, I don't see a lot of greens. Remember, some of our greens are coffee grounds. Coffee grounds are greens. Actually, I didn't do it in this pile though, did I? Some of our greens are the composted cow manure. So just a little bit of green. That's just, again, that I mentioned, there's that challenge this time of year, early spring, of finding greens. No one's mowing their lawn here yet. Can't get grass. Maybe people who dump chemicals on their lawn are mowing grass, but I haven't heard the lawnmowers going yet. So anyways, let's move on. I'm gonna start to shovel. I'm a one-man operation here, so this tarp is too heavy for me to try to pick up. I'm gonna have to fork this in. Let's see how that goes. Now, I didn't mention, it's gonna make a mess, but who cares, it's compost. Did not mention that I put landscape fabric on the bottom. I didn't want too much of the compost falling through the cracks and losing a lot of it. Now, do I risk possibly anaerobic conditions where that landscape fabric is? Yeah, I guess it's possible, but I'm going to be turning this thing. I still think it has reasonable airflow, so I think we're going to be okay. Maybe by the time pile's finishing up, maybe I won't use that landscape fabric on the bottom. We'll see. So I don't know that you want to watch me do this whole pile. You get the idea. So I think I'll probably go off camera, probably off camera anyways. I'm gonna go off camera, finish this up, and then try to decide to show you how much more to show of this whole process. Remember, again, five batches like this is gonna fill this guy up. Trying to make biologically complete compost. That's compost that's full of life, very anaerobic, and has about a Probably more than your typical kitchen compost. You know, we have the kitchen composters over there. You tend not to get a lot of fungal food in that type of compost. We've got a lot of browns here because we're aiming for a fungal to bacterial ratio of about a 1-to-1, which is good for most gardens. Maybe not so much for brassicas, that are exception. We'll get into that some other time. But a lot of browns in here because we're aiming for a fungal to bacterial ratio of 1-to-1. How are we going to know that? How are we going to check that out? We're going to do microscope work at the end of this, and we're going to take a look and see if we have indeed made a biologically complete compost that has all the beneficial types of bacteria and fungi, nematodes, microarthropods, all that good stuff, and very, very few, if any, of the bad guys. We don't want those bad anaerobic organisms. Having trouble talking a little bit. We don't want those guys. That's when you get anaerobic conditions, that's when they breed. So moving on to the next clip. Hang in there, try to speed it up. So I almost forgot the water test. I have now, this was fairly dry, tried it before. I had a little bit of water running off, but that must have just been from one section. So tried the test, not getting a drop. I've now dumped both of those watering buckets. It's 4 gallons of water on this pile. I'm gonna dig down here, try the squeeze test with a banana peel. And I'm getting a couple drops. So, and I can kind of feel it going through my backside of my gloves. So I feel like it's at a pretty good point now. Maybe it's slightly wet. To test another area. I don't see any drops, but I can feel them. I think I just saw one drop, so pretty good in that spot. One more check, maybe over here. Saw one drop fall off. You probably can't see that, but I think the moisture is pretty good at this point. So gonna finish getting the rest of this coffee filter. Good to break that up a little bit. Get the rest of this in there, and then we'll move on to the next one. So I actually didn't do any more video. It started to rain a little bit, getting windy, so just showing you this pile here, maybe a little more green with the weeds. Here's what, after the 5 batches, here's what the assembled pile looks like, tied down with bungee cords and covering the top to prevent rain from getting in. Here's the high nitrogen ramial wood chip, just to give you an idea of how green that was. That's the 50-50 on the green and brown. Here's a picture, this is actually from last year, but it's just showing you my wood chipper and what my wood chipper produces. Here's the box of the frozen kitchen scraps that I got 4 buckets out of. And then finally, here's the recipe. I'll leave this up for a few seconds if you want to take a look at it. You could always pause it too and get an idea of how this all came together. So if you would, please like and subscribe. My first YouTube video, so would appreciate that from all you folks out there. Thanks. Oh, and of course, folks, stay tuned for part 2. We'll get into how to turn this pile. Turning the pile, it's there's a specific method to make sure you do it right. So make sure to look for that as well. It'll be another interesting adventure. All right, take care till next time.